Well, welcome back. Ryan Ripken Show. Yeah, the Ocho, ESPN, the Ocho, 8 the Ocho, dodgeball reference. Brad and I are not in studio, obviously, today. We'll explain a little bit more why, because we'll be back next week. But first things first, Brad, how are we doing?
Doing good. I just made my first pick in my fantasy draft, and it was the one and only Nick Chubb.
Oh, what pick do we have? Oh, by the way, for everyone knowing, Brad has his draft with his guys from home. So he's going to be updating who he's taken and when and why throughout this episode today, which will be great. What pick did you have, Brad?
I picked 7.
Ooh, I kind of love that. He's just reliable.
Yeah, smack dab in the middle. I'm like debating drafting any running backs after Nick Chubb now until later, because I feel like, with the merry-go-round that are running backs, I think I'm just going to go wide receiver around 2 and 3. We'll see.
You're going to have a lot of options. And actually, you could argue Nick Chubb's the best pure runner in the NFL. Not saying beast like Derrick Henry or the talented like Christian McCaffrey or being an offense like Eckler. Chubb, if he just catches more balls, that dude's a menace. If you've seen him squat, that would break my whole body. But so we'll talk about fantasy throughout the show here. We're going to get into a lot of football as well, just because of everything around the corner. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit of Orioles because we know a lot of people love the squad, a lot going on, especially what hasn't happened with some moves, the expanded roster. But football is coming up here. And the reason why also, so Brad's down south. I'm still up here in the Maryland region. But next week, it's going to be opening kickoff weekend in Baltimore. Brad and I are going to be back up. And actually, both of us are going to be at the Ripken Rooster Rumble kickoff event next Friday with Jonathan Ogden. And we got a lot planned for that. So the tickets are open to the public. $100 ticket gets you all food and drink the entire night. And if you just saw on X, Twitter, whatever you guys want to call it, one of our sponsors, and we have more than I'm going to introduce here as we go, is Jimmy's Seafood. So, Brad, I've told you about this, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And we get to hang with Ogden. And whether you know Jonathan Ogden yet, if you don't, you should come on out because he is a fun guy to be around. And we have a lot of cool things planned. We have giveaways, raffles, and yeah, who doesn't want to just kick off the NFL season too, Brad? I mean, we're pumped about it.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is with Jo too, that's where we first met. We went at John Ogden's golf tournament, and he was a great guy to hang out with. He ended up coming up, I don't know, hole 16 or something like that, and just hit a dart, solid two, I don't know what, 290 maybe. He crushed that.
Oh, at least. Yeah, he literally, maybe he took 4 or 5 swings. I don't know, but he's like, Al, you can use my drive. And in my back of my mind, I'm like, all right, he's just going to try to swing as hard as he can, just hooking it left or something. And that thing was pissed on right down the middle.
Yeah. I was impressed. I was not expecting that from Jo.
Yeah, low key, the guy can hit it. And it was fun. So anyway, come out. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk football, fantasy football, but really, what's great about this is all the proceeds actually proceeds are going to the Ogden Foundation. So come on out, have a good time. And then Ravens Texans kick off on Sunday in Baltimore. So give a rundown of what we're doing today. We're going to start with the Orioles here because I know there's some questions. Off day for the team. And then we're really going to hit the football because next week it's going to get really hectic. First week, Brad, I mean, Chiefs and Lions are next Thursday. Football is a week from tomorrow or today.
And that sound means that I got to make my pick. So yes, to your point, we do have to do that. Let's tune in. We're probably gonna butcher this, but I feel like it's fun no matter what. So let's do this so you guys can see this is my team.
All pressure's on
right now. So top picks right now: AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, DK Metcalf. Now, I said I was going to take wide receiver because I already got Nick Chubb. I feel like it's either going to, there's Jalen Waddle down there too. Um, I mean,
Decisions.
let's ask the panel. What are your thoughts on this? I'm leaning
Hey,
towards DK.
it's really if you how much you believe in what he can sell. I love of the two. I like AJ Brown and Amon Ra the better option. I think Amon Ra is probably the most consistent just from the amount of volume he's probably going to get. DK, it's the amount of mouths to feed. That's really for me.
That's a fair point. And then there's Debo down here too.
And again, a lot of mouths to feed. That's my only argument. Tremendous play. You know, the beauty of fantasy is if you have a read, but I probably lean Amon Ra or AJ just because of the offenses and opportunity. But you are the GM here, Brad.
I know. All right, let's see here. So I got 10 seconds to go. Let's I'm gonna have to go with AJ.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that was loud. But hey, AJ Brown last year was I believe a top 6 consensus in standard PPR. And he's on arguably a top 3 offense, depending on how you look at it. But hey, good solid draft for you to start. Chubb, Brown, I'd take it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
So we're gonna run through football in a second, but let's start with the Orioles here, Brad. Before the hear me out's gonna be with the Orioles, or sorry, with football related, but Orioles. I know a lot of questions. Expanded roster September 1st. You have to be on the major league roster, 40-man roster, to be eligible for the playoffs. And currently, right now, as it stands, and I haven't seen anything, and I keep trying to refresh, but sources are saying around that Joey Crable and Colton Cowser are going to be the 2 Orioles that are going to be on the expanded roster coming up. The name that's not on that list is Heston Kjerstad, which I thought for a long time, it just felt like it was inevitable. But if he is not on that 40-man roster by this evening, we're looking at a playoff-less Heston Kjerstad with the Baltimore Orioles. It's kind of a shock because I just felt like he's ready. But at the same time, the Orioles value their 40-man roster spots here, Brad, and clearly they don't feel like there's a space for him as we're talking about this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my opinion on this too, and we've kind of talked about this when it came to Jackson Holiday. It's kind of one of those things where do you really want to bring up a rookie in this high pressure situation and kind of throw them at the wolves, so to speak, when the team's already doing so well, right? I mean, best team in the AL. I don't know if it's almost as if, and I don't know what I would do if I was as a GM, and just kind of along those lines of, do I really mess up something that's this good already? Like, do I put in a variable that could end up not working out? So I think that I probably would go the more conservative route here. And look, Jackson Holiday is not going anywhere. He's a rock star right now. He's a rock star. He's going to be a rock star in the future. So is Kjerstad. I don't think that there's really anything that any good reason you would want to mess that up right now.
Yeah. And to that point, there is such a thing as team chemistry, ladies and gentlemen, and to be able to build what you have. And also Colton Cowser is a very talented player, by the way. And I've said in the past that I thought Kjerstad, from what I've seen, he's the best pure left-handed hitter that they have right now, and Jackson for the future. But to help the big league team right now, I thought Heston was ready. But having said that, Colton is a tremendous player, and maybe this reset, if we want to think of it this way, for him going back up his second stint with the Orioles can have the same type of effect that it had for Grayson Rodriguez. You got your feet wet, you took your lumps, so to speak, and then Grayson came back and now has really found his groove. The hope is that Cowser can do the same. And that's just the way it works. But for Heston Kjerstad, for those why I thought it would be an interesting fit up in Baltimore, is that the guy has done nothing short of just rake this year as well. We talked about Jackson Holiday being younger, but Kjerstad's got 19 jacks across AA and AAA, including 8 triples and 29 doubles. So the guy is hitting, and by the way, he's hitting over 300 on the season between both levels. So when you look at that, you might think that, yes, he's ready. But again, every team has their reasons. And for people wondering why Tyler Wells is not up here, well, Tyler's already been on the big league team, so he doesn't need to be up there. He's on the 40-man. His time's coming. It makes sense that they don't feel like to rush it. And then the guy that we've talked about for a while, Brad, John Means. It looks like John Means is close, but is it going to be the same John Means coming back that everyone was used to seeing prior to his injury?
Right.
So that's kind of what we got from there. And also, I just want to point this out real quick, Brad, and we'll move on. I know that there's issues with every team, and you want to go out there and expect. I know people are very frustrated after the Orioles lost the series finale versus the White Sox. It's going to happen.
It was a bizarre game.
Very bizarre game, right?
Yeah.
Which makes, and baseball's weird, by the way, if people haven't figured that out. But if we were going to go back to context here, and if I were to tell you right now that the Baltimore Orioles would be in first place going into the month of September, and they have a 99% chance that they're going to be in the playoffs, I think we're all taking that.
Yeah.
So perspective of it, they're doing great. You win your series. You keep winning series. At the end of the day, you are going to win the American League East. That I can guarantee you, because that also includes winning the series against Tampa Bay. You win that series against Tampa Bay, in my opinion, the Orioles will win the American League East. And we'll touch on that, Brad, later on as we move to that week, because that game's in 2 weeks. But the Orioles got to keep doing what they've been doing in the past, find a way to win the next game, and keep moving past the adversity that they've had this season. And it's no secret that the next best team that does that is the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're right neck and neck with them. You got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I tell you what, the Rays, man, I thought the way that the Orioles have been playing that perhaps there could be a situation in which the Orioles would just run away with it, and that's just anything but at this point. I mean, the Rays just continue to find ways to win. And man, I was encouraged by by the series that we played them in the way that we played them last time around. I mean, Gunnar Henderson was just an absolute maniac during that series. If we don't play like that, or the Orioles don't play like that when we see them, and most likely we will in the postseason, then I think I don't know. It could get a lot more dicier than perhaps even I anticipated when it comes to the Rays. I'm really impressed with that ball club, especially with some of the adversity that they've also faced this season.
Yeah. I mean, and coincidentally, then those two teams that are dealing with adversity are the top two teams in the American League. Right. And that goes past the fact of just what talents you have. It's how do you keep pushing when things happen. And the Orioles had a lot of injuries earlier this season. Cedric Mullins twice, Aaron Hicks being injured. Felix Bautista obviously is the biggest name that's gone down for the team, but you can't feel sorry for yourself because no one else in sports gives a shit. No offense, but that's the reality. They can say, man, that sucks, but that's all they're going to give you. Yeah. And even for me as a player, even back, going through the minor leagues, people feel bad for you, or the sense that they hate that you're injured, but that's all they can do. And you got to go out there. It doesn't change what you got to go out there and do. And the goal is still the same. Go win ball games. And if you stop making excuses, which the Orioles have done, and so have the Tampa Bay Rays, you're going to find yourself winning a lot more games. And that's what both teams have done. And then coincidentally, I talked about if you were happy that the Orioles are going to be on top. If I had told you that the Yankees and the Red Sox would be the last two teams in the American League East as well as we're having this conversation, I think a lot of people would be happy about that too. So perspective. Should be a fun month, and we'll have a lot to talk about that as we move forward. But tonight, we're going a lot of football because of the fact that it's right around the corner. And nothing fires people up besides their fantasy drafts, Brad, and that the NFL season's kicking off. So without further ado, let's go to Hear Me Out.
Before we do that, I'm up.
Oh gosh.
So I got an interesting list here. Now, it might be hard for you guys to see, but I'll just run it down. There's Najee Harris, Yamir Gibbs, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce. So bunch of running backs still on the table. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go all the way down here to the tight ends and grab Mr. Mark Andrews. Reason being, is that there isn't a whole lot of good tight ends, to go around. And Travis Kelce's already been taken. So I might as well take Mark Andrews for that reason. So we'll see how that shakes out later on in the draft. But that's what I'm going with.
Hey, go big Ravens fans. And it's not like Marky Mark's a slouch by any means. It's
number 2 tight end in the league, period.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I love me some Marky Mark. Unfortunately, especially when you play with guys and the other Baltimore guys, Marky Mark is a hard commodity to come by.
Yeah.
But keep us posted. Solid start for you. Proud of you, Brad. Now, this is where you thrive.
Yeah.
Let's do some Hear Me Out.
All right. So, hear me out, Ryan. I just don't understand the Dak Prescott hype. And so we've seen some drama between the Cowboys this past week with the trade with Trey Lance. And I wanted to run by some interesting stats that we've seen from Dak over the years. So here you go. Here is the initial stats from Dak Prescott as a starter. He's 61-36. He's thrown 25 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. He threw an interception in 9 of the last 11 games. His QBR in 2022 was 59.9 according to ESPN, and that ranked 12th among active QBs for 2022. He's also 2-4 in the playoffs since he started in the NFL. So for me, a lot of people it just seemed as if, the media, social media, what have you, the America's team has just been all in on Dak. And I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback by no stretch of the imagination, but the hype that he has been put on as far as being a top 10, top 5 quarterback, or at least having that potential, just hasn't come to fruition. So should it come as a shock that we saw this trade for Trey Lance? I'm not quite sure. I think that that Jerry is going to see what happens with Dak in the first half of this season, maybe the first 4 games. And if we start to see more of the Dak that we saw last season, then perhaps Trey Lance could end up making a debut with the Cowboys this year.
It's interesting. I hear you on that. I don't think we see much of Trey Lance unless the Cowboys are out of the race, just because Trey Lance hasn't played a lot of football. And I love his talent. But just like with everything you do in life, you need reps, you need that experience. And for a team that has higher aspirations like the Cowboys, they're not necessarily going to hand it over to a quarterback, in my opinion, that is still trying to figure out how he works as a specific, not just as an athlete, but a quarterback in the NFL. I love Dak, by the way. He's one of my favorite players out there because I love how he handles himself. And he's on the team that gets a lot of publicity, and he's going to be criticized over and over again. Having said that, though, it kind of leads to a thought is Dak, is a situation that the roster's talented, but for whatever reason, the Cowboys over a span of decades have not been able to get back to where they want to go. And so when you look at it, the first person you're obviously going to always look at, whether it's right or wrong, is going to be ownership and the quarterback, the two. And people like you were saying, that roster on paper looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, it has, and it has over his entire career.
But again, starting, you can't dispute 61-36 record. He's done a lot of great things. It's just going to be, can they, regardless of it for Dak, if the Cowboys don't make that next step and don't get to the NFC Championship, I feel like everything, the drum's still just going to continue to beat louder. And a point that I kind of want to bring up then is that, Dak only at the time signed a 4-year contract extension, right? So everything now moving forward is, what's it going to be like for him to get that longer contract or second contract from the Cowboys? He can go out there and ball out. We've seen it. but it's going to be in the bigger moments where we figure it out. But how about, Brad, the thing that gets me with the Trey Lance situation?
Yeah.
And hearing the reports that
I knew
the
where you're
head
going with
coach, Mike McCarthy, did not know, and neither did Dak Prescott. And let alone, I think I know how you feel on that, but just the whole situation's bizarre.
It's very bizarre, and it's one thing to not let the quarterback know that you're making this trade, which I think most organizations would probably notify the quarterback, right, that they're making this trade, but it's not necessarily a must have. Right, you don't have to let the quarterback know, but to not let Mike McCarthy, the coach of your team, know what's going on, that you're changing a very important part of your personnel. It's just really bizarre to me. I just don't understand where Jerry Jones's thought process was with that. Obviously, he's the owner; he can do whatever the hell he wants, and we've seen Jerry Jones go rogue before. But to me, that is just a real big head scratcher, my man.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that all the time, this is the reality of professional sports, by the way. If you think you're getting the courtesy every time, it doesn't happen. And right. the perfect example, we're going to go baseball. Harrison Bader found out he was put on waiver by the New York Yankees while he was in the cafeteria. He didn't get told by the team, right? So my point is, you hope that every time it's out of, I don't want to say out of good faith, but it's just out of respect of saying, and not that it means that they think any less of anyone, but isn't it always when you want to hear news and something, you want to hear it from the source first before you hear it from somebody else? It's usually always how it goes. In this case, with Harrison Bader, didn't hear it. He handled, man, you got, we'll show that clip later on, on X, but he handled it so well. And that was a brutal situation. Yeah. But the thing is, that is the reality of sports. So when you hear this in the NFL, even for your star quarterback, he's not hearing. Again, I'm with you. It's not their right. They don't have to. But man, right. You always feel better when you're involved with those conversations. But Mike McCarthy, who's in charge with assembling and making sure this offense is going to run the way, you'd want to make sure that he's kind of on in the discussion of, if we bring him in, this is our plan. What do we think? Type of thing. So it is what it is, but that is the cutthroat way of business in the NFL and professional sports.
Absolutely. Before we get into your hear me out, just wanted to update everybody that I did end up drafting Mike Williams next. So I have Nick Chubb, AJ Brown, Mike Williams, Mark Andrews. Trying to figure out when I'm going to draft my quarterback. So far, the league has not even started on quarterbacks yet, so I think I might hold off until the next round. But I'll keep you posted.
It's interesting. I feel like everyone wants to go. I shouldn't say everyone, but it's always that feeling of Mahomes or Allen have to go in the top 3 rounds.
Yeah,
hurts every time.
Yep.
So keep us posted when the first quarterback goes off the board. Also, last thing before we go to my hear me out, the Cowboys, a lot of people are saying they should be the favorite to win the NFC East, not the Eagles,
which is hilarious.
So in this case, obviously, you answer the question: should the Cowboys be favored ahead of a team like the Eagles? And is it just a lock that the Cowboys are going to be then a Super Bowl or bust team? I think Super Bowl or bust, yes, but is it fair to put them over the Eagles?
No, it's not. And the reason I'll tell you this is because, it's not just that the Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year and they were just that good of a team. It's that this year during their draft, they got even better. Drafting, some key defensive players that they were kind of lacking.
Carter.
Yeah, from all them Georgia boys. I mean, it is just. I think that they are going to be another ridiculous team this year, and they didn't really. It's not that, and they didn't lose many players. They only strengthened their team. So for me, it's a lock. Eagles winning that division. Everyone else is just going to have to fight for second place.
Yeah, I mean, and the NFC East in general is a lot tougher than people give credit. Obviously, got to figure out what happens with Sam Howell, even though he's looked really good in the preseason. And the Giants, it's just going to be the evolution of Daniel Jones as Darren Waller open up that offense even more. Saquon's back. We've talked about running backs value. immensely. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. But to your point, the NFC East, it's the division games are always different. It's the same thing in any sport you play. Division games are going to have it be a little bit tougher. But to your point, the Eagles, they just came off a Super Bowl appearance, lost a tough game. Jalen Hurts was sensational, and it only feels like he is going to get better with a young nucleus on offense of skill position players that seem to keep getting more in sync by the day it was last year.
Right.
I'm excited.
Right.
So,
and they extended Jalen Hurts on a contract that kind of motivated Lamar Jackson, I guess, to take his. You can make that argument as to whether you're for or against that, but I mean, they locked him in for many years to come, and so I think the Eagles are going to be really good for a really long time. Man, it seemed like it was just a couple years ago that we were talking about the NFC least, and now all of a sudden, the division is actually legit.
Oh, it's legit, all right. And I just can't wait for it. There's so many different storylines. I want to see what happens with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
I want to see the Commanders in this new era play better ball. But man, I mean, Jalen Hurts, talked about Dak Prescott as a guy you want to see do well. Jalen Hurts, I mean, his whole story is fascinating, and I just love the way he carries himself. He is a great leader to watch, and also to see his evolution of his game is something that what makes you, why wouldn't you want to root for a guy like that? But all right, Brad, now you can hear me out. All right. Yep. Hear me out. Yes, the Jets on paper can and are Super Bowl contenders. But the first half of the season will be a telling sign of where they actually stand. And I would not be surprised if this New York Jets team, with all the hype, gets off to a very tough start. And it's not that I don't think that they're good. We saw Aaron Rodgers so far this season. He's, he looks like he's feeling good. He loves the atmosphere and the whole culture that's going on with the Jets. But there are some issues, especially on the offensive line for them. When you join a new team, it doesn't automatically mean it's going to be success. You can use Russell Wilson as the example. And yes, his situation wasn't as great as far as coming to a different team, new system. Aaron Rodgers has Nathaniel Hackett, his longtime I'm just blanking. I'm sorry. Longtime offensive coordinator with the Packers.
Yeah.
Getting thrown off. But people forget they still got to play. And we're going through the schedule right now. Buffalo, Patriots division game. Then you go to Dallas, Kansas City, at Denver, which I want to get popcorn because those are the comments of Sean Payton saying it was the worst coaching job ever by Hackett. Then you got to play the Giants, Eagles, Chargers, and then go to Vegas. My point, it might not be all smooth sailing, but I don't expect the Jets to be off to the start, and they shouldn't overthrow teams, just like we talked about with the Cowboys. Shouldn't be overthrow teams necessarily that haven't proven it just yet. I believe in Aaron Rodgers, but you can't discredit a team like Buffalo and a team like Kansas City that around them has very good pieces and has already accomplished that. And they have one thing the Jets don't have, and that is continued continuity with their teams.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it's just one of these things with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, now he's faced a lot of scrutiny and the media's beat him up a lot. But the thing for me is that when things don't go Aaron Rodgers' way, in particular, when they don't go his way because he didn't have a say in it, let's just say, coaching staff makes calls or plays that he doesn't necessarily agree with, or, things just aren't going well. I mean, we saw that last year. We've seen that in years past. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers isn't the GOAT or that, he can't make it happen, or that he doesn't, or nor am I ruling out some sort of MVP type season. But if things start off badly for them, let's just say the Jets are 3-3, that division is going to be very tough to come out on top if you start out the season 3-3, just given how it is. I just have this slight concern about Aaron Rodgers and his attitude towards the season if they do end up starting out 3-3 or worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, they can definitely, as we know, you just got to be hot at the right time, and that's why for the Jets, I think they're good. They're overall could be fine. But the point is, it's with every team. I mean, you can go across to any sport, by the way. And I go back and look at all the teams that have all these high expectations, and I'll go team by team or situation by situation in different sports. When LeBron James went to Miami, for instance, on paper, that team was supposed to be elite. It was a struggle for them. Yes, they got to the NBA Finals, but it wasn't the smooth sailing. They were going to be the best team in the history of the NBA. Baseball, this is a recent one in the last, well, I guess it's not as recent because time's passed, but I was in the Nationals organization when the Nationals then had Max Scherzer on the team and Matt Williams was the manager. Everyone had them as the World Series favorites, heavy favorites. And not only did they not win their division, they didn't even make the playoffs. Matt Williams got fired and you move on. It's that type of pressure that you're going to see. And for the Jets, all the attention is going to be on them. And so we talk about consistency with teams. Continuity helps a lot. And you can't make any mistake by that. And that's why when you see guys switching teams, it doesn't always happen so routinely. But I think the big question is, people have talked about it. Could Rodgers win the MVP? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And quite frankly, I'll say this. If the Jets come out of those first 9 games and they're 8-1, Rodgers is probably the main reason he's probably a front runner for an MVP conversation, because it will mean that he has played at such a high level, which he is fully capable of doing.
Yeah, agreed. Great discussion. We'll get on to the next thing, but I did want to give you an update on the draft. I ended up picking up DeAndre Hopkins, and the QB onslaught has started. So off the table already is Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and it looks like Justin Fields is also off. So, and Trevor Lawrence. So for me, coming up, I got about 4 picks to go. I got Deshaun Watson still on the table, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Tua, and Aaron Rodgers also still on here. Speaking of,
well, I know there's another guy you haven't mentioned. It's my darling. If you want to go later in the drafts,
yeah, he's still on here, and that's Geno Smith. He's still far down here as well. So remind me, he ended up top 7, correct, last year in fantasy?
Top 5.
Top five.
And again, it's not saying with that, but with everything with fantasy and football, you try to look at value, opportunity, and our teams in good opportunities, right? And for Geno Smith, if you look at his supporting cast, he has 3 talented wide receivers now, 2 talented running backs, an experienced coach, and he has another year in the system.
Yeah.
For a guy that's later on in the draft, why wouldn't you want to give a chance? Daniel Jones would be an interesting one because continuity, he runs.
Yeah.
So that's where it goes. Now, the rookie quarterbacks where it gets interesting. And we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson down the stretch here because it doesn't look like he has all the support you would hope for. But that will be for a later discussion. But if you're new to the channel also, Brad, tell me if I'm doing this right. If you're new to it, hit that subscribe button, like button. Like I said, we're hitting a lot of football today because we're going to try to eventually add 2 shows to the week as we push into this football season. We're going to have our baseball content, but we got to hit this, especially with an Orioles off day. Why not take advantage of the opportunity to just have a little bit of a timeline cleanse too? I think we get so caught up with things with baseball and the Orioles. Let's all take a deep breath and take a step back. And I see, Brad, did you make your selection?
Not yet. Still waiting on my turn. Everybody's taking forever now.
Well, you know what? Because this is where it gets challenging.
I'm leaning towards perhaps Kirk Cousins. Nobody's picked him up yet. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, number 1 wide receiver in the league. Kirk Cousins and Geno Smith. So ESPN has Kirk Cousins finishing top 5 last year and Geno Smith 6. So don't know if I could go wrong with either one of those guys.
Yeah, and honestly, you probably have time to think about it. You don't have to take them in the middle rounds.
Right.
But we'll see. So moving in and talking about quarterbacks, and this is a situation that it's 2 young quarterbacks that are they going to make the young leap? And they're both in the NFC North.
Yep.
And it's Justin Fields and Jordan Love. And Justin Fields has got a lot of attention because of what they saw, what everyone saw last year. Extremely talented player, athlete, can do things with his arm, with his legs, specifically showed what he did with his legs. But man, I'll tell you what, Jordan Love has come out this preseason and he has a lot of consistencies or mannerisms that remind me a little bit of what you saw with Aaron Rodgers. Not his style of play, but that his command and presence now seems way more confident than people are talking about. So, Brad, the question is, and the headline in the NFC North is, which young quarterback in your mind takes the leap? Yeah. Is it Justin Fields, Jordan Love, or do you see both?
It's a really good question. I'll throw up a couple highlights.
Running back is Patrick Taylor.
Oh, here we go. Throw up a couple highlights. Here's Jordan Love versus Saints. Jordan just brings up a whole different element. He's a wild card, right? But Justin Fields, I feel like made a leap last year, and I think that he's going to make another one this year as well. You talked about continuity. I think that there's a lot there for Justin Fields. If I had to choose one, I think I'm going with Justin. But man, there's a lot to like about this, and I think everybody's just kind of automatically this year giving the Lions the win in the division. But man, I think it's a lot tougher than people realize.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Look at that sidearm.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the arm talent is what you're starting to see with Jordan Love.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest part was everyone saying, well, could he handle it? The biggest thing for me is if he can make the right reads, command the offense, and you also have two solid running backs, I really like Jordan Love's makeup. I think he has, and wouldn't that just annoy all NFC North fans to have the Packers find a franchise quarterback for the third consecutive time and have three quarterbacks for, it feels like 45 years, right? That would be ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, how lucky.
But seeing some of these, but looking at some of those throws, he's fully capable. You're seeing it on display.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for him is, can you do it as the game speeds up and you're facing some of the top teams in the NFL and their defenses, right?
Yeah.
But I still look back at it, and even though this is a small moment, when Jordan Love came in for Aaron Rodgers against the Eagles, and Rodgers took a lot of hits that game.
Yeah.
Jordan Love made a read. Granted, it was a slant that got taken to the house by Watson, but he had command of an offense in a hostile environment and made a good play and then showed you something down the stretch. So we'll see. But Justin Fields, the athlete, the electrifying player, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't want to see a guy like him take the leap, because it just would be so good for the sport, because he is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And Chicago's been looking for that for a while.
Yeah. I think it would be fun to see Chicago, do something. Obviously the Lions, of course, because they've just never been good. But, it seems as if it's anybody's division right now, going into essentially every season. The NFC North was always going to be, belong to Aaron Rodgers. And now it kind of seems like it's anybody's race right now. I mean, and let's not forget, Kirk Cousins is still there. The Vikings didn't do much in the playoffs, but man, did they scorch everybody last year. And so, there's just a lot to like about the NFC North. I really do think it's anybody's division to lose right now.
Well, but so you don't think Detroit should be the favorites? And is Jared Goff sneaky not getting enough credit? Because I don't think he gets enough credit here. And I'm going to explain in a second.
So I'm not saying that we shouldn't, we should just write the Lions off. I'm saying that it's just anybody's game.
Fair enough.
I don't know if there's necessarily a clear favorite, much like, everyone is claiming there is. I just think that there's so much talent in that division that I really do think that I don't know. I wouldn't want to make a bet as to who's going to win that division, like some of the other divisions that we're going to talk about. But man, it's going to be a fun season for the entire NFC North. That's for sure.
It's funny. Earlier we talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown on the Lions being drafted early, and the reason why is because, one, he's so dynamic, and he's gonna have a lot of volume. But two, Jared Goff loves him, and Jared Goff's game has actually been more elevated than people realize. And specifically, I think this is one of the most wild splits you're going to hear. And if you heard it last year, you know what I'm talking about. It's Jared Goff's home and away splits.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely insane. At home last year, Jared Goff threw for over 2,400 yards, 23 touchdowns, and get this, 3 interceptions. compared to just over 1,900 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions on the road. He threw 17 more touchdowns and 1 less interception at home. And there's the stats right there. It's absolutely nuts. And so I think what I love to see with Goff is he didn't let a situation and going from, especially, that's hard. The Rams trade for Stafford. They go and win the Super Bowl, and they felt like they were a quarterback away and you weren't it.
Right.
And to see him then find his place in Detroit is fun, but the biggest question is can he replicate that? Because if he can replicate that, I think we're to see the Lions have a chance and to be on top of the division. But if he can't, like you said, it could just be a wide open division where which young quarterback and or Kirk Cousins can take over.
Yeah. Yeah. And with Kirk Cousins, like I said, I mean, obviously in big games, he's always been kind of a question mark. Primetime games, we know how he is. And even in playoffs, it's been difficult for him. But I do think that, if they can figure out how to put it all together in the postseason, we talk about this all the time, right? All you need to do is get in the dance. And so I think that the Vikings, they proved themselves last year, obviously. A couple hiccups here and there, and then getting into the playoffs was a whole different story. But just getting in is the first step. And so I think that pause. And so I think that, I think the Vikings are really there. I really do think that they are.
Hey, I got a lot of Minnesota friends that would love to see the Vikings keep it going. Should be. I'm excited. I love the fact when there's divisions where there's a lot of questions and it's a lot to be played out. This is the perfect example. The NFC North is literally, it's a blank canvas, and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because for all the reasons, you can see so many different variations of possibilities, which you can't say that about other divisions at all. So it should be exciting. NFC North, also huge Amon-Ra St. Brown guy, by the way. If you have him fantasy, I'm all about him this year. Let's move on, shall we? We'll stay still in the NFC. And we're just going to touch on this a little bit because it's kind of another division where.
Real quick, I did end up drafting Kirk Cousins. Speaking of the devil,
Captain Kirk, you got a man crush on him after the quarterback show too.
I do, yeah. I'm a Kirk Cousins fan now for sure.
I will say, how do you hate? For me, it's how can you hate on Kirk? Captain Kirk, he goes out there, he busts his ass. So what if you can get a little quirky on the field? He just seems like a guy you would love to be around. Honestly.
His wife dresses him every day. It's a thing.
It's fantastic.
It is.
It's absolutely fantastic.
It really is.
I need help with my fashion design or fashion look all the time. I like my tees, though. I like to keep my hair for as long as possible, too, but that's for a different day.
Yeah.
So NFC South, though, because another team about a lot of questions, a lot of different faces down there, especially. You have Desmond Ridder taking over, Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick. Derek Carr is now in New Orleans as well. And you're sitting there going, well, by default, is it going to be the Saints? Because the only other quote unquote experienced quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield and Tampa. And there's been a lot of changeover for them down there. The biggest one being Tom Brady gone. They still have talented players. But are we overthinking this too much, or is it really just the Saints division to lose?
I don't think so. I think it really is the Saints division to lose because, you have Derek Carr and there's no argument that he's the best quarterback in that division. I just don't, Jensen is now out for the season for Tampa Bay. So you got another guy in the trenches that's not going to be there for Baker Mayfield. The Panthers are the Panthers, and there's a lot of unproven talent over there in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta could surprise us, but I just don't see that happening just yet. So I do think, I think that the NFC South is going to be the worst division probably in the league. If I'm thinking about it right, they probably are going to be, and it just happens to be that Derek Carr could be the best of the worst.
But you know what? I like Derek Carr as a person, as a player. I actually think he gets a bad rap, and I hate the way he was driven out in Vegas. I think he can do just fine, but to your point, and then there's some defensive pieces for the Saints, but having an experienced quarterback, a guy that has actually had some solid success in the NFL,
Yeah.
And they have a young receiver in Chris Olave, Michael Thomas. You don't really know where he's at anymore as far as with all the injuries, but they have the most continuity when it comes to a team down there. I think the Falcons are going to try to run Bijan Robinson into the ground, and they have Tyler Algier as the second running back there. And they have, if they can put it all together, I say the Falcons to me would be really intriguing because they do have Drake London, they do have Kyle Pitts, and there's the odds right there. Whammy. Saints are the favorites, Falcons. I love the Panthers long term, but it is a lot to ask of a number 1 overall pick to go out there and expect to take over, especially when you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Agreed.
And yeah, Tampa, no one's giving Tampa a chance, but hey, maybe Baker's got some luck in him. Who knows?
I mean, listen,
feeling lucky?
He showed up for the Rams in his debut. I mean, there's I don't know if there's something to be said for that, but like if we see that Baker Mayfield in Tampa, then maybe there's something to be excited about down there.
Yeah, I mean, and they have good weapons. They have Rashad White at running back, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin.
Yep. The pieces are still there.
They got some pieces.
Not having Jensen, a huge loss.
Yeah, and that's tough. And it sounds like it could be something that ends his career, unfortunately. Being a lineman, it's one of those jobs where you do a lot of the dirty work. You don't get a lot of credit, but it's great seeing other people talk about how impactful Ryan Jensen is on the football field, especially. Just sucks the situation that has to happen.
He's a huge
huge difference maker. Well, all right, so we're all in with Saints, but then we'll sprinkle some money on the Bucks. Last one, the NFC. It's going out west. Kind of touched on a little bit. But is there really any reason to doubt that the 49ers any doubt that they're not going to be the team? And ultimately, honestly, with a healthy Brock Purdy, could they be the best team in the NFC?
They could, but I'm not ruling out the Seahawks. And, to your point, what you had talked about with Geno Smith, I think that there was a lot of, people out there underrating them, underestimating that squad. And you talked about it at the top of the show, just the pieces that Geno has around him and, world-class coaching as well. I just have to think that if there is going to be a team that gives the 49ers fits, it's going to be that rival there over in San Francisco. So, the Rams and the Cardinals, no question, they're going to be in the bottom of the barrel. But I think, Seahawks probably don't end up taking over the 49ers, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. Let's put it that way.
The Seahawks are just that one team that just feels like, regardless of the situation, like last year, they're supposed to be bad, right? Yeah. But somehow Pete Carroll's got his magic over there. He's slinging balls in practice too, by the way. And
oh my God.
And great video. First off, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. But the other part with it is you're able to, you're able to, on both cases. Oh, hold on for a second. Whew. Sorry, that built up a lot of dog hair down here. Ollie's leaving his mark left and right. But what we have seen is the resurrection of Geno Smith's career and him finding himself. And on top of it, the Seattle Seahawks, by making by trading Russell Wilson, have really found a new, it's a new era in Seattle. And you kind of felt that came together extremely quickly last year. And now you have guys like DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker. You're seeing some really exciting pieces on offense. And that's what they're going to have to do in order to try to challenge a 49ers team that is so explosive, also so good defensively, that you got to find a way to keep up. The Rams, the Stafford, you don't know the situation there. I've seen the news that Cooper Kupp could miss time. It does feel like a two-team division. And who knows what the Cardinals are doing. But right now, doesn't seem like a lot good, a lot of good is happening for the Cardinals. The report is that Joshua Dobbs is going to start. It really looks like the Cardinals are in a full rebuild. So 3-team race. I guess with this case, should there be any concern with Brock Purdy? Because I think his health, honestly, if it's his health, that's one thing, but I think the dude's going to ball out.
That's what I was going to say. So if there's one thing I was going to point out, it was going to be his health. And so if he can stay healthy, then yeah, I mean, the Niners are going to do really well. It's just, that's the big question mark, right? I mean, we've talked about this among some of the greater quarterbacks as well. And we're going to get into discussion with Lamar Jackson a little bit later, but I mean, that guy's been out the second half of the season 2 years in a row. So like, and that impacts the team. There's no way around it. So, if you don't have your star quarterback, you're not likely going to get to the Super Bowl if you even get into the playoffs. So he's got to stay healthy. And if he can do that, then I think that the 49ers have a legit shot, especially when the NFC in general, the conference in general isn't all that great when you compare it to something like the AFC.
The AFC is a gauntlet, especially with quarterbacks. But you know what I love about Brock Purdy, and this is, I think, the beauty of sports, is seeing something happen that no one counted you to be a part of this equation. And I think it's the beauty of it. And I had this conversation with Brandon Copeland on the Off Script podcast, talked with Darius Jennings. Guys are going to come in with a lot of the expectation, a lot of the hype, a lot of the status, and rightfully so. Coming out of college, they earn that right and that hype, right? But some guys are going to be overlooked, and some guys have to wait for an opportunity. And when that moment comes, can you seize it? And nothing screams that more. You can say with Tom Brady, but now Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, which by the way, that means you're the last pick in the NFL draft. Now comes to your team, is the fourth on the depth chart, I believe, to start. And then because of injuries, because of situations, he's elevated to quarterback one. And he is not just going out there, going through the motions of game manager. He's actually understanding what to do and making the right decisions and then becoming a playmaker himself. So for everyone out there, who cares where you go? Who cares what happens? Appreciate the details. That's something that I learned from Brandon recently too. Appreciate the details, because if you put enough work in, you're going to find out that you can be capable of so much more than you can even realize when that moment presents itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Philosopher Ryan, how's your draft going as we move into the AFC?
Draft is going good. Here's my lineup so far. I got one more in my starting lineup to go. I got Kirk Cousins, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown, Mike Williams, Mark Andrews. George Pickens was a late draft pick. I thought he was going to go earlier than that. But in the 49ers defense.
Ooh.
I'm actually pretty stoked about that George Pickens pickup.
Yeah, I will say that 49ers defense will look a hell of a lot better if Nick Bosa is on the field.
Yes.
That guy, monster, and he's still obviously figuring out contracts. And we'll get into another player that's still dealing with this contract situation in the AFC. But we're going to kick off down in the AFC South. And you remember when we were talking about situation down there with the quarterbacks, with Anthony Richardson? We're going to get into him in a second. But it really, the big question or storyline is it all the Jags, or should people not sleep so much on the Tennessee Titans still?
I think that it's still all the Jags. I really do. I mean, I don't know how Tennessee has really changed all that much. Yeah, they got DeAndre Hopkins, and I just talked about drafting him, but I just don't think that there's going to be much going on with the Titans this year. Nick Vrabel and that squad. Look, you can't overlook the talent that they have, but when you compare it to what the Jags had done leading up to last year, that ramp up for the Jaguars last year was absolutely incredible. The way that they just walked over everybody. And so I don't see how anybody's going to dethrone them off of that division.
Yeah, and the one team that would be is the Titans, but they're going to need their older veteran star players like Hopkins, like Henry, to stay healthy. Tannehill to play well, and Vrabel finds a way to motivate his guys and keep them in the hunt. And I'm really curious to see Calvin Ridley back playing. I mean, before he had the suspension, he was talked about as being one of the most complete wide receivers, specifically from a route technician perspective, being able to get open, create separation. And he's looked explosive. Lawrence seems to love him. Really excited about what he can do, but that's going to be the biggest question, right? Is can that team challenge? Because I think it's fair to say the teams that we don't expect too much are the Texans and the Colts, but for the reasons are different because they feel like they're trying to find their quarterback. But I'll tell you what, I'm worried about Anthony Richardson's situation. And it kind of leads into that question of which rookie quarterback do you expect to have more success for the year? Is it going to be CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans or Anthony Richardson with the Indianapolis Colts?
God, both of them are in pretty bad situations. Like the Texans aren't exactly a world-class organization. And you can make the argument that maybe they're trying to be, and there's a corner that perhaps they're trying to turn. And Anthony Richardson, I think, is just so raw as far as talent's concerned, that it's a big question mark. And so I but I love watching Anthony Richardson play, right? Like, it kind of reminds me of, and not, I don't want to compare him, I guess, but like if I had to just say he reminds me of this person, it would be a Lamar Jackson. Not that Lamar Jackson didn't have it all there, but just from a pure talent perspective, he's just that dude. And I imagine that he's going to be a lot of fun to watch this season, whether they win or lose. I think he's just going to be a ton of fun. So if he can figure out how to, smooth those edges out, then I think that perhaps Richardson does end up being the better quarterback, because I do think that he's more talented.
Talent, yes. I think they say it's kind of a build between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Right. But again, you got to go out there and put it all together. And even Josh Allen had struggles to start his career, especially early on. But I just don't know if I love the Colts situation. I like Michael Pittman a lot. I like the fact that Anthony Richardson has a coach that is going to have an offensive background to try to help him, which could help, try to mimic what the Philadelphia Eagles did. But I am scared just with the overlooming situation. And I love the head coach, DeMeco Ryan, with the Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryan, sorry. And I love the fact that they're actually trying to bolster the offensive line. They have some good wide receivers, young wide receivers that are going to have opportunity. And I love Dameon Pierce, by the way. I think he's my guy that I think is going to be a monster this year in fantasy. He runs hard. And on top of it, you bring a 49ers coaching staff over, which I like how they implement things. So if I were to save the two, I think Stroud might have the better year. I just worry about Anthony Richardson of his situation, and no Jonathan Taylor hurts.
Yeah.
I that's no knock to any running back, but when you take one of the best players off your team because of injury or disputes, it's not going to help a rookie quarterback.
Right.
I don't care what you say. And we can say this, Daniel Jones benefited from having Saquon Barkley on the field. Imagine you didn't have a back like that last year as Daniel Jones was trying to figure himself out. It's a huge loss.
Yeah.
But
if you don't have the run game, it doesn't set up the pass game. And so that's going to be the real challenge for Anthony Richardson. It's like, if he doesn't have a reliable back, and then he's just throwing most of the plays or running for his life most of the plays, which probably ends up being the case if there is no Jonathan Taylor. So I think that there is going to be a lot of challenges there, but man, I just feel like he's going to be a lot of fun to watch regardless.
I hope so. I think they've got great situations, they have great talent, and to have the ability to last and to be exciting players. But man, we've seen this though. Situations early on, especially for young quarterbacks, can make or break. Yep. And I hope in this case for Richardson more so that all the drama doesn't hinder what he's trying to do, especially with a new first-time head coach as well. That's something where I know that DeMeco Ryans has that same background, but he's coming from a coaching tree in San Francisco that had a little bit more stability in the Shanahan system. And DeMeco Ryans has created this great culture, so to speak. He's got a great reputation. That's no knock to anyone else, but that does matter, especially when you're trying to groom younger players.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we move into the AFC West, then, guys, for anyone, if you turn in for the first time, please like, subscribe. We're going to keep adding on to this. We're going to be live next. We're going to be at the Iron Rooster next week. Don't know if we're going to be live yet for that, but come on by for the Ripken Rooster Rumble kickoff party. It's going to be great. Jonathan Ogden's going to be there. Proceeds going to the foundation. If you haven't heard, just going to be a great time. And Jimmy Seafood is the first sponsor that we announced. We have others that are going to be a part of it. And I don't know about you. I like having drinks, food, talking football, and really getting amped up, which should be a fun weekend. So speaking about CJ Stroud, Texans-Ravens kickoff on Sunday too. So come and talk with us and J.O. about it. Should be a great time. And the website, Ripken Rooster Rumble, that's where you can buy the ticket. And we'll see you on September 8th at 7 p.m. Would love for you guys to be there. And I wouldn't lie to you. It's going to be a fun time. I'd lie to Brad sometimes, but not about this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it, man. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and can't wait to be out there with everyone and hitting it off with everyone out there. And listen, if it's anything like the golf tournament was, it's going to be a ton of fun. So,
yeah, that golf tournament was. We'll tell some stories later, but that was a good time.
It really was
a good time.
Yeah,
really good time. The Ogden Foundation knows how to have some fun. So moving back into football, AFC West, and we're getting closer then to the Ravens topic, but the AFC West, the Chiefs are still the Super Bowl defending champs. They are missing a key part in Chris Jones, their stud defensive tackle. And there's hype around a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, and there's always another storyline. But if we're being honest, is it really anybody else but the Chiefs?
I just wanted to point this out, though. The tweet that was heard around the world was that Chris Jones says that he can afford to hold out till week 8. So, it is what a guy. What a teammate that guy is. But regardless, it's the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs all the way. And it's kind of crazy to me. Look, Justin Herbert is an amazing talent. He is the franchise quarterback. I'm not sure I would have sprung for the money that he ended up bringing down. But, he's bringing – what was the contract again? It was up there with Lamar Jackson's and Jalen Hurts, right? It was right in that ballpark, correct?
Were we talking about with – sorry, go ahead. Herbert?
Justin Herbert's contract. Yeah,
yes.
Like I love Justin Herbert as a quarterback. I think he's an amazing talent. He is that guy for the Chargers. But man, I just don't know if I would have sprung for that just yet, because there's a lot of things that he hasn't done, and maybe he does those things. But he's in a tough division, and it's going to be really hard to get past the Chiefs, just given that it doesn't seem to matter who their personnel is. Andy Reid somehow gets it done as long as that guy Mahomes is at the helm. So I don't think that there's any reason to believe that the Chiefs will come out with it. And that's it. End of story. It's not going to be the Raiders. It sure as hell isn't going to be the Broncos. And the Chargers they're going to be in second place. That's just all there is to it.
I think it's fair to say that the Chargers might have the more talented team on paper. The Chargers on offense, and this is actually the story for me, and this is what makes the Chiefs have been so great. And losing Chris Jones, by the way, not having him, their defense is way different. Stopping the run from them, there's a drastic difference in what their defense looks like without him in the middle. Drastic. Yeah. But for the Chargers, they have a very talented defense, and we're talking about fantasy and drafts and whatnot, but even not fantasy drafts, you can name the Chargers skill position players for the most part. First off, quarterback Justin Herbert. They have Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and then they drafted Quentin Johnson. So you can name guys. Gerald Everett's another player. Is their tight end. On the Chiefs, outside of Travis Kelce, and then maybe you can say Isaiah Pacheco as being the starter now, you probably aren't going to name their wide receivers unless you truly follow the Chiefs. Yeah. And I think that's the telltale. Tyreek Hill leaves. Great. We're not skipping a beat. Someone else leaves, a new guy steps up. And I think that continuity what the Chiefs have is continuity, obviously the best quarterback in the NFL, but they also, their coaching has been something that's been so solid. And the Chargers, that still looms on them from that loss to Jacksonville in the playoffs. Is Brandon Staley the guy to lead that team as a head coach? And that's nothing, no knock to him as an individual at all. That's just the fact of when you're going against a mastermind like Andy Reid, they clearly have an understanding of how to win those games and push through. Now, the question is, can the Chargers do that? Because now with Denver, they're better with Sean Payton there. And if Russell Wilson plays better, we should see a better Denver Broncos team. So it's really just going to be, can they figure it out? Because the Chiefs are like clockwork.
Yeah.
If Mahomes and Kelsey are working and they have Andy Reid, you feel like they can beat anyone regardless of who else is on their team.
Yeah. Now, I will say losing Orlando Brown was a big deal. But, like you said, I mean, it doesn't seem to matter who they lose. They always end up finding someone else to plug in there, and it's just as if nothing happened. No bigger storyline would be than when they lost Tyreek Hill and then they go back and just win the Super Bowl. That's all they did. Like it's just crazy.
And Mahomes having an unbelievable year. We didn't really talk about with the Raiders though, and Jimmy G being the quarterback. Josh McDaniels, I don't know how I feel about the whole situation, but I do like Jimmy G as a person. Can Jimmy G bring a winning culture to this Raiders team?
I don't think so. He wasn't really that guy in San Fran, and he had all the pieces around him. I mean, yeah, they got.
But he won. He won games, even though he had the pieces around him. Could you go out there and execute enough? People could say he's a game manager. Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I like. He just doesn't make plays. You know what I mean? Well, give me one Jimmy G play that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that play. That guy was, I mean, he was on fire. Or even a game where he was just like went off, right? Like there isn't one of those times.
Oh, I got one. The final game of the regular season, not his last year as a starter for the 49ers. He has to go down there. If they don't go down and score a touchdown on that drive against the Rams, the 49ers are going to miss the playoffs.
That's right. I do remember that game.
And then they did that. Then they go into Green Bay and win the game in Green Bay. Not that was a great offensive game. That was a brutal game in general. But what I'm saying is he's a guy to me on a different sense. It's kind of almost like when you have Joe Flacco in the playoffs, not that Joe's at a whole different level as far as he just turns on a different level. But what I'm saying is for Jimmy G, when he has to turn on that big moment, even if he makes a mistake, the bright lights don't bother him. He's just prone to making other mistakes at different points. That's what I'm wondering. But to the point of it, I don't know what to make of the Raiders, especially after how they've gone through such a change. And especially Josh McDaniels hasn't had the track record of having success as a head coach. I mean, he went all in to get rid of Derek Carr to replace him with a guy like Jimmy G. And I think it's fair to say if there's not success here, then when is there going to be success for McDaniels when he goes and gets his guy?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I think that I don't know when the Raiders end up becoming good again. I really don't.
Well,
I mean, maybe we get surprised this year. I just don't see it.
Well, and the crazy thing was they did make the playoffs 2 years ago after all the situation happened with John Gruden. Unbelievable effort and whammy. It just feels like they took 3 steps back.
No, well, they gutted the team after that.
It's the way the cookie crumbles, but they do have Josh Jacobs. They do have Devontae Adams. They do have Max Crosby on defense. They have some solid pieces. Still the Chiefs division, but hey, we'll find out. And we'll find out if I'll take Devontae Adams in a draft coming soon. Going to the AFC North, because I think this is where a lot of people had questions.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think all of us, I mean, I like to think of it this way. I love the Ravens, but I'm very objective, right? I think we both are. We don't like to look at ourselves as letting emotions get in the way of actually having a conversation. So in this case for the Ravens, We know Cincinnati's been the team in the AFC North the last couple seasons, but of the teams in the division, does a healthy Lamar Jackson put the Ravens as the team to beat in the AFC North, or is it still the Bengals division until proven otherwise?
I think it's a really tough question to answer. But when you look at the personnel, and this is another thing that we have to mention, if it's a healthy Lamar Jackson, then yeah, I think that they do end up being the team to beat. When you look at the pieces that have been put together, with the Ravens, and the signing of Jadeveon Clowney, you have OBJ obviously, and Zay Flowers is unproven, but from what we've seen in preseason, the dude's an absolute stud. I think he's going to be Steve Smith Sr. 2.0, just given his attitude and the way that he plays ball. I do like the offense, and I'm really excited to kind of see in the new Todd Monken offense. It just kind of comes down to, can we get Lamar Jackson through an entire season healthy? And so if we can, then they are the team to beat. But if not, then it's still going to be the Bengals division to lose.
Yeah, and man, that's been the MO. I tell people this all the time. Despite all the injuries the team had 2 years ago, where everyone was injured.
Yeah.
The Ravens at one point were the number 1 seed, sitting at 8-3, and that unbelievable win against the Minnesota Vikings at home. Lamar Jackson, sensational comeback. When Lamar plays, the Ravens are going to be a Super Bowl contender. If he is on the field, the Ravens are going to be a Super Bowl contender. Yes, you want to get Marlon Humphrey healthy. Yes, you need your cornerbacks and the defense to have a chance. But the Ravens have some really good pieces in the trenches. We've talked about that in the past. Defensively, offensively, they added Clowney. A lot of respect to the Bengals, because Joe Burrow is one of those guys too that the moment's not big for him. He doesn't get rattled anymore. But Lamar Jackson plays well. He has a winning record against the Bengals. He's 6-2 against the Bengals, winning record against Burrow head-to-head. But the question's going to end up being, can you stay healthy and play the full season? And if he does, I think that the Ravens are going to win the AFC North again, or win the AFC North again, like they did back in 2020 and 2019. Sorry, I'm losing track of the days. So that's the capability, what he brings. But having him not on the field, it changes the full dynamic of the team. Regardless of what Tyler Huntley has done, you need your guy out there. And there's just no ands, ifs, or buts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of one of the things that, we're just leading into, I should say, our hate to see it, love to see it segment. It's kind of one of those things where I kind of hate to see that Lamar Jackson didn't take one snap during preseason, right? I mean, we saw that there was, I don't know. We saw a lot of what seemed to be chemistry being made in spring training, but it's not the same spring training and training camp. But I think that there is something to be said to creating that chemistry in game time situations. And, I would have loved to have seen at least a few snaps, maybe 2 drives, in the last preseason game with Lamar and the entire starting personnel just out there, just kind of to see what we could see. Right. But on the other hand, you could probably make the argument that perhaps the Texans game coming up here could end up being like a preseason game, just because there's probably pretty low expectations for the Texans in week 1, and the Ravens should easily beat them. So perhaps maybe a lot of fans or even the media could view that as some sort of preseason type game for them. But I, for one, wouldn't expect any kind of fireworks from them. I could be wrong. Maybe the Texans go crazy, really drop the ball. But I would be surprised if we saw some sort of crazy fireworks from the Ravens offensively first week, just because we hadn't seen any snaps from them.
That's true. What we are seeing or hearing is it looks like your draft is continuing to roll on through.
Yeah, I had it muted, but I thought that it would have muted, but oh well. Hopefully
it's all good.
Fans aren't seeing or hearing it, but
hey, you know what? All good. It's all part of it as we learn. And obviously, that's why we like to do things more in person, just because, it makes it even simpler, and we look better. I think I feel and look better when I'm in studio with you, to be honest.
You know why? Because
But
your boy makes you look good.
Yeah, I said, yeah, you do. No ands, ifs, or buts about that. And I need all the help I can get. So I will say this though, to counter your point. If they're getting the right reps in practice and you're building that continuity in with your guys, then it should be okay. But just like with everything that we've talked about, new pieces, new offensive coordinator, it could be a little bit of rust to start off. It might take time to get used to it. In the past, Lamar not playing in the preseason. Last year, I believe he didn't play in the preseason either. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember exactly.
I don't know. He may not
But
have.
what yeah. What I wanted to say though, regardless, is Lamar Jackson in week 1 is dynamite. And I mean, you can go back that his first game in 2019 of the MVP season, 5 touchdown passes. His game in Vegas, despite the loss, really sensational, did everything, tough loss for the team. He dismantled the Cleveland Browns during the COVID year. And there's that game against the Dolphins. That was Lamar Jackson's really showing the league what was to be expected for the rest of the season.
Coming out.
So my point is Lamar is very good in the first week. New York Jets last year, same thing. He's going to be ready to play, but how well the offense necessarily moves, I think, will be one proponent of it. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. But you know what, Brad? Since you had to hate to see it, and that's kind of wrapping up the AFC North. And we'll get to actually next week then the Cleveland Browns, because that's the one team we really haven't talked a lot about. And should they get much love? I don't know. But what I love to see is that college football is having some games, like some big games coming back. And I cannot wait to see what that looks like. So, for instance, Colorado is playing TCU, and you might think, well, is that really a big game? Well, Deion Sanders prime, and they're kicking off, and I want to see what the Buffs are going to look like out there in the open with Deion at the helm. And I got ties. My sister works for the University of Colorado. I want to see the Buffs do well. I'm rooting for them, so that should be fun. Another game to watch. Boise State at Washington is one I would like to circle as well. I've got a soft spot again, connections for the Boise State Broncos. And honestly, who didn't love when those Broncos teams were the underdogs back in the day? Statue of Liberty play against Oklahoma. But Boise State still is a team that has that name recognition. And then the big game, though, actually, Brad, is going to be Florida State LSU. And that is one that I am hyped up about, because those are two teams that, quite frankly, have a lot of aspirations. And that's Sunday night, September 3rd, 5 versus 8. And quite frankly, that might be the headliner of it all, but should be fun. College football is back, and just the time with your family is over. It's all just about football now moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be what are they ranked now? So
I can't hear you right now, by the way, Brad.
Oh, that's weird. Shoot. You can't hear me at all?
Not yet. Not yet.
What the hell?
Could lead into with the grind my gears.
What the fuck? I have no idea what happened.
Grind my gears. Well, in this case,
is the damn
being
audio.
so reliant on technology really does actually grind my gears, and this technical difficulty happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times I have been on a call and it's dropped, how many times I've tried to listen to Brad or he's listened to me and it's been a problem. I have dropped my interview with Steve Johnson, which was so excruciating because it was an hour and a half of just great behind the scenes of Steve. So my point is, I love the fact of where we are with technology, but it really grinds my gears that consistently I find ways to have problems, and I still can't hear what the hell Brad is.
I have no idea what's going on.
But he can hear me.
I can hear you just fine. Yeah. I don't know.
Is it me? Am I the problem?
Yes.
Thanks. Well, I don't know what to say here, Brad. Did we just wrap it up? Because I can't hear a damn thing you're saying.
I guess so. I mean, did your earbuds die? Something? I don't know. But yeah, that has to be it. That's hilarious, though, that everybody could probably hear us, but we can't hear each other. Well, that's going to do it for us, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm sure you can hear me at this point. So make sure you hit that like button on your way out the door. My grinds my gears was people saying long story short. Ryan can't hear me right now, so I'll just tell you guys that he says long story short a lot of times, and actually ends
now
up
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So I was saying that what grinds my gears is that when people say long story short, and that that sometimes you say long story short ends up being a long story. So that kind of grinds my.
Well, shit. Great timing coming back.
Oh, there we go. there's the my fantasy. So we want to get into, so let's just close it out. My fantasy draft here is closing out. We're getting close. My starting lineup here is Kirk Cousins, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown, Mike Williams, Mark Andrews, George Pickens, the 49ers defense, and Koo is my kicker. I got a couple of decent backups. I actually ended up snagging Geno Smith as my second quarterback. And Samjay Pirine right now is my running back that I have sitting on the bench. I thought that was a nice late draft pickup too.
Samaje, yeah, Javonte Williams is back, but is he going to be the same back to start? Are they going to try to ease him in? Pirine showed he could play.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly why I picked him up.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it was me. I think my headphones died, and it didn't make the sound that it died. I hate myself.
Oh god!
And I'm not going to say long story short anymore.
Oh man, yeah.
Is it just for long? If I say a long story, or is it if you say long story short and it's short, or is it just?
It's just in general. When people say long story short, you know that it's not going to be a short story. You just know it. People say that, and then they end up just going off on a tangent regardless.
Well, that's me. I'm that guy. And I'm going to go tuck myself in now because I got to go take care of the Ripken Rooster draft, which is taking place in about 3 minutes. So we'll keep people updated on how that goes as well. But Brad, anything else? I think we covered a hell of a lot tonight. That's
going to do it for me. We did cover it. It kind of felt like a little bit of a marathon. I'm a bit exhausted from this, but we got through it. I'm pumped for the NFL season. I'm really excited to have so many things to talk about. We are going to have to do more than one stream, and we're going to have to figure that out this football season. So I'm super pumped about it. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And that's going to do it for us. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.